Welcome, everyone, and the Dream Speaker team is back. I'm Debra Eckerling, author of your Goal Guide and creator of the DEB Method for Goal Setting Simplified. And every week I bring in three friends to dive into the topic of the week. And I believe it was last fall, I invited Bobbie Carlton, Robbie Samuels, and Chen, and we talked about virtual meetings. And then a couple months ago, we talked about speaking and accessibility. And of course, such a good group. We weren't even finished when we're like, okay, guys, what's next? And what's next is, thank you, Bobbie, for the suggestion, speaker fails, because we could speak, you could be speaking forever and ever. It's part of the whole being a speaker awesome thing. So I'm really glad you suggested it, Bobbie, and I'm thrilled to have you all here today. You might be watching this as Goal Chat Live, you may be watching the replay, or you may be listening to us as the Deb Show podcast, which is on the Marketing Podcast Network. Wherever you're finding us, we're glad you're here and choosing your speaking goals. Let's jump in. And before we do that, because there could possibly be people who don't know us. So let's start with some introductions. So Bobbie, please share who you are, why you're here, and why this topic. Go.
So I'm Bobbie Carlton. I'm the founder of Innovation Women, which is a mission-oriented online speaker bureau. And contrary to popular belief, Innovation Women is not all just women, as both Sean and Robbie are members as well as a number of other, I will say, secure males and non-binary individuals. But we help more women get on stage, and we help conferences become a little bit more diverse and gender equitable and inclusive.
And why this topic? I mean, other than it's obvious, but why this topic, Bobbie?
I think sometimes we sabotage ourselves and we don't realize that we are sabotaging ourselves. And I've got some good examples for later, so stick around.
Awesome. Love it. John, welcome. Good to see you. And this, for those who are listening to the podcast, John is demonstrating the ultimate speaker fail, which is talking without unmuting.
It's just a classic one, but I have to show with this, right? That like speaker failures are so key. I'm Chen. I'm the author of a book called Engaging Virtual Meetings, right? One of our jobs is to like make sure that speakers don't do that, but it is one of the biggest ones. And I got to share this, like Matthew McConaughey today had a gigantic live stream on today. And my friend sent me this video. Oh, hold it. Whoa. This video over here, and this is Matthew McConaughey's beginning part. Now, take a look for a second here on this video. And if you see above my head, you're going to see that no sound, no sound, no sound, no sound, no sound. That's a chat. And if you can't see the bottom left of that, that's 300,000 people watching this live stream right now. That's why this thing is so important, because the bigger your audience, the bigger the impact it is when nobody can hear you say something.
It's sort of like if you Zoom with the mute on, does it count? Well, like, is it? I know this is why I say I'm not funny. It's if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? If you're talking and it's muted, no. Beware of the mute button. Great to see you, John. Thank you for joining us today. And Robbie Samuels, great to see you again so soon. I just interviewed Robbie for my new podcast, Taste Buds with Deb, which is launching the beginning of May. And because Robbie wrote a book called Croissants versus Bagels. But that isn't even the entire reason we're here today. So, no. Robbie, but I had to share because I think I'm just proud of myself for being the first food podcast that you've been on.
It's true. That was a great day. So yes, I'm Robbie Samuels, and I have written a couple of books. My third is Break Out of Boredom, Low-Tech Solutions for Highly Engaging Zoom Events. And I think that, as a producer, I have witnessed lots of speaker fails and try my best to help my speakers avoid them by doing the prep work. So I think it's worth reminding people about all of this.
It's such a good point, because it really is a reminder. I mean, I've been speaking since ever, but I did competitive speaking in high school and college. But things happen. You can be speaking for years and years, and it doesn't matter. We're in this age where, can everybody hear the siren?
Mm-hmm.
Are they coming for you, Debra?
No, my neighbors. Different story. Anyway, we live in this technical age when anything and everything can go wrong, and part of it is fails, but part of it is just kind of going with the flow.
I mean, I think that's what
Right?
you just said is why it's important to hire professionals to support your event, because we have seen it all and we are not flustered. I think the biggest compliment I get from clients when things go wrong, and I have an example from just the other day, we just were like, yep, plan B, plan C, all right, plan D. And then we got to work and no one freaked out. Everyone still got to go to the event. It all worked out. And I think, if they were left to their own devices, that may not have happened, because they were concerned until we were like, oh, let's just do this. And they were like, okay. And we gave them an action plan. So we happen to have to do a few action plans to get that one to work. But yeah, that's part of it. And I think the more we speak and the more we aim to get 5% better, whether we're speaking in person or virtually, I think these are the little things you plan for.
And Robbie, on top of that, it's not just what a producer does to fix and have a plan B, C, D. It's the speed they can go through plan B, C, D. Right? That's the killer
100%.
in Matthew's live stream, is that sound for a second or two, then if you pick it up, and the audience will give you grace. But if it's a 45 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, they're going to be like, who are you? Right?
Yeah, I'm out of here.
Yeah. How did you get this? And so I really think that speed is something that's so important.
I like, Robbie, you were talking about plan A, plan B, plan C. There are 26 letters of the alphabet for a reason.
And there's more backup plans that you need than 26.
Well, you can double and quadruple those letters if we want to get that kind of picky. So, Bobbie.
Hi.
Can you share one of these stories that you teased? Do you have a favorite speaker?
Oh my
story?
gosh. Well, I have a long list, and I tend to categorize them into things that keep speakers from getting opportunities, things that keep speakers from getting invited back, and things that just, I'm not going to say ingratiate you with the event managers and your hosts, but there are things that irk audiences. So, it's I have this whole swath of these things. And, it's interesting. You guys were talking about the plan A, plan B, plan C, because, when we are doing the Innovation Women webinar series, so we've done over 100 of these. And beforehand, we always have a rehearsal every single time. Number one, because a lot of our speakers have never been on the Bright Talk platform. If somebody offers you a technical rehearsal, take it. I don't care if you've been on Zoom a million times. There might be some reason that they have specifically said technical rehearsal. And for Bright Talk, we always offer a technical rehearsal because it has some little interesting, let's call them features, that not every speaker is prepared for. For example, Bright Talk has a 30-second delay. I don't know if they're expecting a string of swears from our speakers or something. 30 seconds is a really long time. And every time we prep a speaker on the Bright Talk platform, this is one of the things that I talk to them about. But I feel until you have emotionally accepted the fact that there is a 30-second delay, it's just not going to impinge upon your brain. So very often we'll get a speaker who will be wanting to engage with the audience on Bright Talk, who will be like, so what do you think about X, Y, and Z? Audience, put it in the chat. I'll wait. And I'm like, no, don't wait. It's 30 seconds of dead air that's happening. Yeah, it's a long time. So that's one of those things that, it's just, you learn that by showing up and having somebody beat that into your brain.
Bobbie, I actually produced an event for California WIC Association where the speakers and the chat moderators are in Zoom, a Zoom meeting, but it is live streamed to Hulu, and the delay could be as little as 7 seconds. It's often 15, but this last time it was 26 seconds almost every single time. And I'll know because I have a countdown clock at the very beginning, and I'll write a note. I'll tell them all about it. And then in chat, I'll be like, by the way, this is the delay. And so we try to train them to say things like, all right, go to chat. I'm going to ask you to do this thing. Here's this thing. And now I'm going to talk about it a little bit. And I'm like, and if you just sit there, I'm going to unmute and poke you a little bit. And like your moderator is going to ask you questions. Like, yeah, we have to, and then because they don't really know what to do. We're like, here's how you plan for this. Here's how you don't tell them don't do a whole prelude and then say go to chat, because like that just delays the answers coming in. Yeah, but yet I'm like, I encourage them to think about how to use polls and chat, right? Because we want some engagement, but it is that's the difficulty that they probably aren't used to being part of.
And you know, where I was going was kind of like the whole take the rehearsals. If you're offered the rehearsals, take the rehearsals. If you're not offered a rehearsal, beg for a rehearsal. You know, it's like, I don't care. Just do the rehearsal, people. Another thing that we do is we tell our speakers, hey, you know what? Things happen. You know, your internet goes out, the power goes out, your car goes by and grabs your audio on Bluetooth. I don't know, like things happen. Come back. Like, you know, I'll vamp for a couple seconds. If it happens again, I'm canceling your ass and I'm going to record it later. And, you know, because we're not going to do this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That is just designed to annoy the audience. I lose you once and you can come back. Awesome. I lose you twice. We're done here.
Oh my goodness. I do have rules, and you all obviously you play by them because you keep getting invited back after time and time again. But I am with you. If someone has something beyond their control, then I might invite them back. It also helps when I have 3 guests and one guest has a problem, because that's not there's a nice little balance of that. But I've been on panels where the host was kicked out. And it's me. So of course it's like the 2 seconds and then I just go into Deb mode. So I think that's kind of a nice also overcorrection, right? If you're on a panel and the host is having problems, knowing these skills to fill in is also super helpful. Yep. And you mentioned audience participation. So I want to give a shout out because we do have some people watching live. Well, some people commenting, so I know who they are. So Donna Roberts Cunningham, welcome. Good to see you. And Donna has a question. Also, Phil Mershon, really happy to see you and have you here. I love it when all the worlds collide. And I love all the feedback as well, because one of the things that Phil said minutes ago, boredom, another fail. So we're going to talk about boredom in a second, but I really want to talk about the mic fail. So Donna wants to know what microphone everyone's using and recommendations. So I'll start. I use my earbuds because, as you've noticed, lots of outside noise. These are the ones that filter the outside noise better. My professional pretty mic I use for my podcast filters nothing. So we've got that little balance thing going. Bobbie?
Oh, I absolutely love my Rode NT1 large diaphragm condenser microphone. Oh, love you, baby. My voice actually doesn't sound like this. I sound a little more akin to Mickey Mouse in real life. No, but no, I just love this thing, and you know, that nice warm tone on it. Love it.
Robbie?
So I was influenced by Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income when I was deciding my microphone. This is the one he's been using. It's the Heil PR40. I invested in it back when it was 2015, and it sort of forced me to keep going with a podcast, because now it's an inexpensive mic because I've used it for so many years. but it's upfront investment. And I got it because I was living across the street from a hospital in a hospital district on a main road in a dorm room on a college campus when I was hosting my podcast. And then I had kids. And so this thing actually does an incredible job not
Directional.
picking up random noise, including
Yes.
my kids banging at the door or traffic outside. That's why I have this.
Nice. And John?
Well, my favorite mic story really comes from a CEO of a company, and he changed positions from when he was in rehearsal to when he came on. And what did he do? He went into the meeting room that had all glass walls, and then switched from a regular, like, decent Yeti mic to a laptop mic, right? Which gives you the impression that you are in your bathroom, is what it sounds like. And so it's really key. So the mic that I use and love and swear by, this is a Countryman. So these over the ears, it's nice because then I have one more thing that's out of my way. And then it's wireless. So you've seen, I can get up and walk in some of my programs, but let me just switch so you can see the difference. And this is a Shure SM58. This is the hallmark for singers. If you ever see them live, these are the mics that, like, the Who swings around in a circle. And if somebody does a mic drop, it's usually one of these mics, and all the AV people are going, no, because it breaks the mic when you do the mic drop. But if you can see the difference, right,
So
between
rich.
two mics, right, there's a richness. And one of my favorite stories about having the right mic is that Elizabeth Gilbert, right, who wrote Eat, Love, Pray, was about
Eat, Pray, Love.
Yeah, in rehearsal, picked up that it sounded like she was in the shower too. She goes, I said, do you have another mic? And she goes, oh yeah, and she trumps off. Then she walks back and she goes, you mean one of these? And it's like a USB, right, high-end USB mic. And it just changed her whole keynote till the fact, to me, it was one of the best keynotes in the last 3 years. And one of the key factors was her mic. Mics are so important. If you don't have a mic, go get one, for crying out loud. It's less than $100.
Just want to add
there.
I just want to add that in my book, I was saying, if people have audio issues, like, people will turn off the show. Like, if there's video issues, people will stick around. And my assistant was like, oh, I don't know. And so I did some research, and it very much backs it up. And if they stay, they think that you and the information you're sharing is less credible. So even if people don't leave and you have a really bad audio, that's not a good sign for your longevity in the work that you're doing. So if you can invest in better audio, like, that's the thing to do. And it is not very, this is expensive. I've only sold 2 people on this in 8 years. I mostly just tell people to get a Blue Yeti and to set it up correctly. The way Bobbie has hers hanging is the way you would want to hang a Blue Yeti. And most people are doing what I'm doing. And this is a Blue Yeti you would not speak to like this. You'd want to have it hanging like that. And I think people sometimes get equipment and don't know how to set it up, and they don't know what settings to do. And so even if you have a good mic, it doesn't mean necessarily you're going to have the best sound unless someone helps you set it up properly.
Yes.
Instructions are key. Oh, and Bobbie, everybody says you sound good. So Nicole Smith, welcome. Donna also had compliments for you. Yeah, that's about it.
So and just for the person that said I sound like I'm on radio, I have a broadcasting degree, and I actually did work in radio early on in my career. So
I feel like we should do
good
something.
ear.
This is coming up next on NPR. We're gonna have
wait, I have to do my thing.
Do it, Bobbie, go.
WTRY Pix 106, Albany, Schenectady, Troy. You
Yes!
always remember your first call sign, baby.
That's so awesome.
So another speaker fail that I have had, just to shift back to that for a second, is people who have a nice looking microphone visible in the shot, but I can tell they're not using it.
I know, I've done it
so
too.
If I'm producing while we're doing the green room, I'm like, I'm always trying to be so gentle. I'm like, could you just double check? I don't know. I'm hearing, could you? And they check, and it's like, it's kind of like the difference that John had between his Countryman and like the other mic. Like, it's like such a stark shift. And I go, and they can't tell. And I go, yeah, that's much better. Anyone else agree? Great. Okay, let's stick with this. Sometimes they come in with headsets, and I go, can we try it with just your computer mic? Because they're using Bluetooth headsets. and they take out the Bluetooth and I go, yeah, actually that is better. Your Bluetooth looks good, but it was kind of tinny. So, I mean, just people don't know, and unless you record yourself and play it back, it's really hard to get a sense of it.
That's the number one tip, Robbie, for speakers. If you don't, because like most of the time, virtuals don't give you back the feedback, like how it sounds. And so you need to record it, go back, listen to it, right? And then fix it. And I do think that speakers need to have that, because I really, what comes to what Robbie was talking about, your executive presence or your speaker presence is so important. And your audio is like 75% of it. Because you're right. You can I could turn off my camera and keep going. But if my audio dies, it is game time over.
Mm-hmm.
So part of being prepared, part of that rehearsal, having a good mic, making sure you sound good, because that's important. And but jacking on it. You know, this is a very nice prop. I was doing this is how I got to these microphones. I was doing a panel using my pretty ATR, and I kept getting comments, too much background noise. Will you please find another microphone? So
wow.
I know, but listening to feedback, you know, the good kind, not the kind, and adjusting, which goes back to what we started off. A problem is one thing, but the speed at which you can adjust to is turning a fail into a success.
Mm-hmm.
Discuss. Oh, or before we do that, Phil has a question. Robbie, what are your thoughts on the mic appearing in videos?
For me, it's become part of my brands. I'm curious what Bobbie thinks. Like, you know, I went to do a pre-record for a big event, and they had a company doing producing, and I was like, yeah, whatever your checklist is, I'll just follow it. And they were trying to figure out, like, can you get that out of your frame? And I'm like, nope. They're like, can you? I'm like, I'll show you what happens. And, you know, like, I moved out of the frame, and I'm like, can you hear me? And they're like, I can switch to my computer mic. They're like, no, you sounded really good. I'm like, that's right. So it's like, it's just become part of the brand, and it's fine. I think embrace it. There are a friend of mine has one of those shotgun mics that you can't see. It's like right above their head, like at a movie studio, and it works really well. But I think they would have the same problem that you have, Deb, about, you know, noise, because it's like it's pulling in too much. I had a very specific problem, and the people that I've sort of sold on this solution similarly had to deal with a lot of things they couldn't control for. I'm also sitting in a room with a wood wall and wood floors and wood surfaces and a window for an entire wall, and you can't tell. And if I'd had other mics, too many hearts. I mean, I would have to be sitting on cushions and putting tapestries on my wall. And I don't want to sit in the closet to produce a podcast, even though that is a solution. And I want to be able to do video without you seeing all my clothes, basically.
Yeah. And for me, mine is hanging this way because this is part of my entire desktop setup. And so when I'm not on mic, which I hate to say it these days, it's a lot, I can move the whole thing back. It's out of the way. I can focus on what I'm doing. But when I'm speaking, when I'm speaking, I'm usually standing, and the whole desk goes up, and the boom arm that I'm using is actually attached to the thing that goes up as well. So it goes up with the whole standing desk.
Nice.
But it's kind of funny. I do think that having a showing mic sends a little signal to people. And the signal is, this person is serious. Just saying.
Yeah, I had early on, before the pandemic, I had a 6x6 cardboard wall that I was using as a backdrop, because I was in a little tiny studio. And until my kid learned how to walk, it was perfect. And then my kid would walk by and knock it down. But no one knew it was a cardboard wall. It was just kind of this white, and it would curve around a little bit. People thought, because I was wearing like the over-ear headphones and had this mic, that I was in a podcast studio. that was everyone's like they didn't look at me and go like, oh, look at that cheap setup. They were like, whoa, like you're such a pro. And I always joke, it's like showing up with your own cue stick to a pool hall. Like you better be good.
That is a really good analogy.
I think
John, you were gonna jump on in?
Yeah, and a mic in and mic out, right? I mean, in the wireless part, that's the nice part, is that no matter where you are, you turn your head left or right, because there are things here with this mic, and there's some research now. Let's see, does anybody know what the word frustrum? Do you know what the word frustrum means?
Frustrum?
Yes, frustrum.
Got nothing.
Right, maybe somebody on chat. I'll just wait here. No, just kidding. Okay. No, frustrum.
We do not need examples of fails.
So frustrum is actually the amount of space that you can be in to participate validly in a virtual meeting. So what happens is, you know, in Robbie's example, is that this is why the mic has to be this close, because watch the difference. You know, right now, you can actually hear some vocal quality things that you wouldn't hear in other meetings. But if you start moving, right, 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot, I'm talking exactly the same, but you out there are like not getting this.
Yeah.
Instead of this voice. And so that's what I mean. If you're gonna take the mic out, you got to have a high quality wireless solution. And if not, put the mic in mainly for this key part. When you get this close to the mic, you can now really be a dynamic virtual speaker. That's it.
So are there any, before we jump into fun things like keeping people on board, I know it's not a word, I don't care. Are there any other technical fails? Or rather, solutions to technical fails that we need to jump into? I know there's some. Pick a favorite.
I'll jump on my favorite one right now, right? Which is verbalizing when you don't need to verbalize anymore. It's 2023 right now. And if I could never hear another person say, and now I'm going to share my screen. Right? If I just like share your screen and just keep talking. But if you could just save the 42 seconds of my life of saying,
well, it's not just they say that, they then narrate all their steps, and they like, or they say like, okay, so breakout rooms, let's see how many people do we have, let's see, all right, math, I don't really like using math, let's see, and it's like
it figures it out
don't
for
need
you.
math.
Don't
need math. Why didn't you decide before this moment how many people in the room, regardless of how many people in the event? Like you're not 400 people. It's only 60. You could just have decided 4 people per room, you know, like, and do you want 4 or 5 or do you want 3 or 4? Like just decide. But yes, and then my other one is when they show us their entire desktop when they're trying to get to something because they didn't have it open. They share their screen prematurely. Nothing is set up. And then they're narrating their way through.
And then you see their inbox with 42,000 emails, Robbie. That's my favorite.
Don't look.
I love that.
Don't look.
I always feel like that's like
I have
visually
a better
eavesdropping, right?
I have one for you. It's when they show either PowerPoint or Google Slides and they haven't shifted into slideshow. So you see the little row on the side of all their previous, like all the slides coming up, and you're like, don't look, don't look, don't look.
Well, the best part, Bobbie, is when they leave it that way and then present a whole segment.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, and they tell you that they have to.
Why?
Like I've had people be like, oh no, I have to do it this way.
No.
Like,
well, because I had somebody moving stuff on the slide, Robbie. Right? She needed to do that because part of her gig was to take the slide and move stuff around.
And
Donna just put the favorite in the chat and they say, can you see my slides?
How can you see my slides?
It's another reason to work with a chat moderator or a producer is we will tell you if you are muted. We will tell you if you're showing the wrong thing or not showing. Don't say anything. We will tell you, we will unmute and like assume everything's working. Save everyone from hearing that. Yeah, that is definitely a thing. I just watched someone do a video where they were using a tablet to handwrite all the words on a slide. And so he was like small on the side. And so he was looking down for like 95 seconds to write it all out. He spelled the word there wrong twice. And I was like, and then he would look up and I'm like, is this really the better plan? Like it made me itchy. Like it just was like, oh, maybe on one slide, like the entire presentation. And then, you could have just like had a handwriting font if you really wanted to.
I actually saw someone recently do a presentation, handwritten slides.
Yeah.
And I will fully admit, beautiful handwriting.
Yes. Very important.
Gorgeous handwriting. But I'm like, everything was so faint. I'm in the back going, I can't see that.
Oh,
Yeah.
And then, Robbie, we might as well pile on the time when a speaker shows a video and doesn't click that it's a video and doesn't click that it has sound. And that's it. Like you play this
all of 2020.
Yeah,
that was the biggest thing in 2020 is no one understood how to make sound happen on a video. And like, and the thing is, they didn't fix it the first or second or third or fourth time. They would be like, I don't know. It's like November 2020, and they're still showing up being like, I don't know.
Well, Donna actually shared recently that somebody goes, you can annotate? It's like, really? 2023, you can annotate?
Yes. The answer is yes.
So my 2020 story was that twice in, I would say like April and May, so really early, I attended sessions where people were going to show us how to use Zoom because I was like really curious what other people were teaching. And I went to one by a reputable organization that was being led by someone I think was a reputable trainer, speaker, facilitator. And at some point she goes, okay, now we're gonna do breakout rooms. Oh, wait, they're not enabled. And so she was like, okay, because she was, of course, using the organization's Zoom. So, and then she goes, and I was like, oh, I mean, this kind of thing happens. I was like, and she goes, okay, we have to leave because we have to enable it and then restart the meeting. And then as we're about to go, she goes, oh, last time I learned that you have to wait 30 seconds before you come back in. And all I heard was, this happened before. And so one way to think about this is that if you're in person, you have an AV writer, which is the document where you communicate to the host your needs. Like if you go to a Marriott to present and you get on stage and suddenly realize there's no projector, whose fault is that? Right? You cannot blame them if you didn't ask for it. Second, if you didn't double check that it was there when you got in the room. Like these are the kind of things that speakers sort of almost like just let go of any responsibility. Like somebody else is in charge. Well, not only are you you're kind of running everything. Like you're figuring out the venue and the tech and like getting your own water on the lectern. Like everything is you. So I created my first set of the No More Bad Zoom virtual Zoom settings checklist back in 2020 in response to that. And it's changed so much over time. But yes, making sure that if you're using someone else's Zoom account, that they've enabled everything. Like if you want to use the nonverbal check mark, green X, green check mark, red X, that it's there. Like don't, or have someone be a co-host. Like these are all the things that like someone has to enable for you.
It's so true. And so if I speak on somebody else's account, I say, I got to meet with you and review all the settings in your account. And they're like, we'll use yours.
Well, I send them the document instead of having to even offer that. And either they do it or they say, we'll just use yours. Yeah.
I like you that. I got to jump on Donna's comment here, though. How do you kindly tell a speaker that they need to practice, and especially filler words? So, we're watching the new series too. Have any of you watched Love is Blind? Right. And
No.
so I'm watching this Love is Blind, and I got to just say for our younger generation, like your ability to say like all the time, like is kind of like too much. And so Donna just recently had a speaker, I think, that said 25% filler words. It's painful in the audience. She's a Toastmaster too, by the way. So all she's doing is counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. And it's just so painful that again, I really worked hard at it in the last 6 months to use a tool. Again, I'm not getting no endorsement fee here, but Yoodli, YOODLI.ai. It'll drop a bot in there and give you back a report on your filler words. And I dropped it from 6 to 3%, and I got which I got to be I'm terrible at, but I moved it from 1st to 6th. So as speakers, right, all of us as speakers, It's amazing how many professional speakers too use filler words to the point where it's detracting from their credibility and detracting from their message.
Yeah, filler words come about when you are thinking, when you don't know exactly what you're going to say. And I feel like a lot of speakers, when they use filler words, they're killing a little time while their brain catches up and figures out what they're going to say next. You don't need to do that if you know your presentation, you know what you're going to say, and you also use pauses as punctuation. No need for filler if you use those pauses.
I think that
love
actually pausing online is really powerful.
Yes.
And I've used
Absolutely.
it as a way to bring people's attention back from whatever they've multitasked. Because usually when there's silence on air, we think there's a problem. So our brains immediately go back to look to see if there's anything wrong. And then I continue. So used well, it could actually be a way to re-engage people rather than yelling at them to pay attention to you. You can get quiet for a moment.
And that's the number one tip to get rid of a filler word is just shut up. Right? Just take a moment
yes.
and pause, and it will actually come out better. It will actually come out better.
I want to shout out to Lisa B. Steiner. Filler words equals verbal pause.
Mhm.
Absolutely. The commonality that I'm getting, and I forgot, I love it when I have you all on because I basically don't even have to talk. I can just let you guys go. But the commonality is, as a speaker, you want to make the audience comfortable. Anything you do to make the audience uncomfortable, such as verbally telegraphing what you're going to do, or talking on mute, or not checking your settings, all of that is going to work against you. So look at the audience experience and what's going to make them feel fulfilled. Thoughts? Bobbie?
I'm going to actually jump in here because I was just this week working with a corporation that is reviewing my slides before I come in and do a presentation. They caught something I had missed. I haven't seen. I've been using the same slide for years, and I completely missed it. And I was a little bit mortified. I mean, thank goodness that they caught it before I ended up on their stage. But it was an image that I had of a newspaper headline with a derogatory term. So what it did is, and I've used this headline for years, it was talking about the lack of women on stage at conferences and events. And it talked about the all-male panel being lame. And I was like, oh, I didn't catch that as a derogatory term for people with a disability. And I have been using that slide for forever. And I just cringe right now because that is something that may have made somebody in my audience somewhere feel uncomfortable. And I feel terrible about that. But good lesson. We can always improve, and we always also should be updating our slides.
I love that you run an Innovation Women. You've been speaking forever. And thank you for sharing that example because it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. We've all been talking for years and years and years, but we can always learn and we can always get better. And you reminded me, I saw somebody who did it was a presentation, and in it, he was talking about the greatest speakers of all time. And I will not dignify who one of the speakers in it. I will not go to anything this person presents again. Because if they think this person is one of the greatest speakers, they are not my people.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sometimes we're divisive without realizing it. I mean, we already covered a lot of disability access stuff on the last show, but I still want to bring forth my friend Donna, who's blind, telling me that a joke was made. It's part of a presentation, and the punchline was on the slide, and the speaker never spoke to that point on the slide. So the room erupts in laughter, and she, to this day, is left going, huh. And it's like, please remember that, like, you need to speak to every point on your slide for a variety of reasons. People are not looking at them. I mean, if it's virtual, they could be taking their kid to soccer. I mean, you don't know. But yeah, people with low vision or who are blind are in our audiences. And the same thing with, saying things like, stand, all this stuff. I mean, like, we do these things. Sometimes it's uncomfortable and sometimes people are fine with it. It's funny where, like, I've had people who are wheelchair users say, like, that's fine. You can say walk, you can say stand. I understand, but I know others who would be really offended. So I think we do our best to kind of avoid some of the more glaring examples.
Well, you mentioned like kids in soccer, so I'm going to just give 2 speaker stories of catastrophic failure proportions.
Jeez.
Because it just shows the power that you have as a speaker, and when that power is not used correctly, right, that bad things happen. So one is, again, we're going to go back to mute. There was a coach who was having a call with all of his athletes on the call, but the meeting hadn't started yet, and so he did not know his mic was not muted.
Oof.
It was hot, and it turned out that he was arranging a 3-way for him and his wife on air. This was reported to me by somebody else in a virtual meeting. They said that this was a real thing. So that's the catastrophic way, when your private life intersects your public life in not a favorable way, right? Many politicians have fell down to that. But here's another one. This is a best-selling author who I know. And one of the other ones too as a speaker is like, maintain your mental health, right? We say this all the time, self-care, but this person had been running on the road and got to that point, when we were on the road prior to 2020 and might have been doing back-to-back days. And so she hit the stage of a major corporation after 30 minutes of sleep, after like probably her 5th day traveling. And in the middle of her keynote, she dropped the F-bomb in not a kind way. And
Wait, how do you do it in a kind way and then continue?
Well, look at all the authors now that use swear words in the title of their
Yeah.
things. So there's some speakers who can create enough rapport or, with their audience and get away with it. I'm just saying this was not one of those cases. and literally the client like had to fire her on spot. Right.
Wow.
And this is like a long-term client. Like it was a costly lesson for this person. And I think that, speakers who don't, some of the things that speakers do, like we prepare ourselves, we get a good night's sleep, right? We arrange all these things before we get there. A 1-hour keynote easily takes 8 to 16 hours of prep if it's new and it's unique and it's good. And so, that's what happens when you don't take care of yourself. And that's when I think a lot of speakers fail, is that they get on stage and they are not all there. Right. And I think that's the ultimate fail.
Well, isn't that go back to when you love what you do, it shows. When you don't love what you do, it really shows. So when you're at the top of your game, it's going to show. But if you aren't and you go out there, when everything was only in person, one of the biggest advice I would give people is, if you're not up for a networking event, you do not go to a networking event, because you will make the wrong impression. And I think that's still valid.
I have a story about, in the before times, a virtual program. So back when it was definitely more webinar, I was multitasking and like cleaning out my inbox, and I had my phone next to me, and I was kind of watching what this guy was doing, and it was sort of on kind of in the background. And I was like listening in, taking some notes here and there. And then it went quiet, and I was like, oh, program ended, And then like I started hearing some voices, but not in like a presentation mode, like a conversation's taking place. And I look over, and the guy is getting undressed and ready for bed.
On camera?
On camera. And I thought, this recording is going to go out. Like, he's not going to go to the end of his recording, like he's going to share the replay. But I like got freaked out, and I just hit the end button, and then I didn't know how to reach this guy. So like, I just like, to this day, I'm like, oh, I feel bad. I never actually wrote this guy to tell him. So yes, be aware of like your camera on and camera off is a big thing. Your mic hot or not is a big thing. I mean, there's people who also, sometimes the fail is participants who take their laptop into the bathroom or whatever. Like, I think some of this is like in our control, and sometimes we just have to have really fast reflexes to mute all and just like remove people's cameras for them. Because you just, yeah, some of this stuff is happening. And this is also why I'm going to keep saying have a chat moderator or have a producer, because when I'm presenting, I'm looking at the camera. I'm not necessarily seeing the whole gallery view. So having someone else who is watching that and can like remove people who are being either thoughtfully or like just not thinking, they're being disruptive in some way. And yeah, you don't want any of that happening live or in your replay.
Yeah, Robbie, I have saved a number of, I think, well-to-do business people here in Seattle by turning off their camera
Yes.
as their producer. Now, the funny part too is to turn on your camera again, you have to ask me.
Yes. Yes.
But and then I private chat them too, and I let them know, by the way, I turned off your camera, right? And usually that favor will come back around, sometime in your lifetime. But if you want to do a favor, if you're the host of a meeting and you see something, you should definitely turn that camera off and save that person the embarrassment of getting on to a 4 billion viewed YouTube video.
I had a guy who didn't realize that he was on video while he was presenting his slides, and he was yelling off screen, like he was muted, but he was yelling to his wife in the other room because he couldn't figure out how to do something. And I had to just turn off his camera because like, so ever since then, I say to every single speaker, so when you're sharing your slides, we can see you. Like I just yeah. And how do you look at the camera or look at your like put your notes close to your camera? Like I also had someone who was like, I might give your notes, they're in a good position. Like, yeah. And then he went like this and he presented. He said, because he had his notes in a good position and he just looked off screen the entire time.
Oh, this is a great keynote, right? Like this.
I swear, early on during the pandemic, so many event managers came to us and said, this speaker looks really good for my event, but the only video they've got is of themselves on a physical stage. I need to see them like here. I need to see that they know the right place to look. I need to know that they've got the right equipment, that they know how to use it, because too many of them got presenters doing this.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons that we did the partnership with Answer Stage, was to provide our speakers with a way to create a video that showed them as virtual speakers.
Right.
And, it worked like a charm because you could very quickly see who knew what they were doing and who didn't, or who didn't have the proper equipment to look good on camera. So yeah, the whole like camera work thing with virtual speaking, it's incredibly important and you need to know what you're doing.
I had a facilitator who wouldn't take my direction. And so it was a small, intimate group of women talking about something really serious. And she leaned forward and like murmured her way. And so we hear her murmuring, but we're looking at her forehead the whole time. And then she kept losing track of who had gone. Wait, did Mary go? Wait, Mary, did you? Wait, screen changed again. Like it was that kind of event. I'm like, no one feels like you're holding space for them right now. Like you think you're doing it because you're like, oh yeah, but it's like we're just seeing the top of your head.
It boils down to, I love what Bobbie said, have the right equipment, know how to use it. But there's also, and yes, we've been talking for 15 minutes. I want to go back to the boredom, or rather the how to not cause boredom, be boring. Because that's, the equipment is one thing. You've got that covered. But there are so many other things people can do wrong. So what is your favorite boredom solution?
John should go, or Robbie. Like, I have got a story later that'll just curl your hair, but they should go first with the boredom one. That's them.
Well,
Well,
as Robbie's book is Break Out of Boredom, I feel like we should ask him to do the boredom question first, then to John, then to Bobbie. So Robbie, go.
Great.
No pressure.
Yeah, good branding. For me, I think it comes down to understanding what is the purpose of the gathering. And so people coming into the gathering are thinking, feeling, and are doing one thing. And by the end of that time together, you want them to be thinking, feeling, and are doing another thing. So sometimes boredom is like not having that clarity and having maybe too many cooks in the kitchen. And so they like throw everything in. I think sometimes it's also like, oh, we just learned about how to do this thing. And so they just throw it in. It has no connection to the purpose. And so it's very confusing and distracting. Not knowing the order that people are going to speak. So everyone is put in the spotlight is like deer in headlights. Like that's the kind of stuff I think is another kind of fail. But I think that the real boredom is when we just have a 45 minutes of death by PowerPoint followed by ineffectual Q&A and no one moderating chat, which is still happening in some circles. Like that is still the norm. And so the bare minimum for them is like to rise above that. And yet, John and I can tell you like there's so much more. I think part of the boredom people are experiencing, the fatigue people are experiencing, is that they're not stretching beyond that sort of tired format, and no participants want that now. We all want engagement. So if it's purely content and there's no opportunity to ask questions live, there's no opportunity to talk to each other, the chat's been turned off, no one's paying attention to the chat. I always ask clients that tell me they want to do this. I'm like, when people come into your office, you put bags in their head and muzzles on them, because that's essentially what you're doing. You're like, we don't want to see you, we want to hear from you. We're going to pre-plan our questions. And it's their fear. And I said, well, if you want to do that, then why not pre-record and just, release it on YouTube? Like why even do live? So I have a big thing that we have to make the case for live versus replay. And that usually comes down to not just content, but some form of connection and engagement. So we just have to find a way to meet that need. Otherwise, just pre-record and skip getting everyone there at the same time.
Well, Robbie, one of the things that happens here that creates boredom.
Oh, please. There are people listening to the podcast. We get your example. Keep going.
Is the inability to change your tonality at least once during your meeting. And we do get that, right? Like speakers, actually was a #1 research tip from Rachel Kassar, who has a tool called Virtual Sapiens Sidekick. And they actually said for 2023, the first thing you can do is think about how can you vary your tone, right? Change the speed, right? Change the pitch a little, or even just a little bit in slowing down and speeding up. And so I do think that's one of the key aspects of boredom, is that speakers aren't trying hard enough to change some stuff up and do something different. Like everyone falls in, I don't know what, Robbie, where did this come? This 45-15 thing has like dropped out of the air. Like, you shalt talk 45 minutes, right? And then answer questions for 15. I was like, why did this format come in? One of my secrets is that right now I design most of my programs so the audience is talking half of the time. And it goes back and forth. Oh my gosh, it's a conversation. What a concept, right? And so it's like that. But I really feel important, though, Debra, that there's the #1 tip. Let's see if I can get this to work. Oh, good, that did work.
Don't read the slides.
Whatever you do, don't read the slides. It's so amazing to see a presentation these days where a speaker comes in and just reads every mark off the slide. And that is like boredom in a handbag 101.
It is pretty goofy. And I do a lot of speaking, but most people who know me know that, yes, I will speak, but my absolute favorite thing to do is lead workshops, whether it's for the pre-event planning or goal setting simplified, because when people interact, it brings that kind of energy. And it's not just interacting in the chat, but interacting and sharing examples and finding things to bond over, because then they're even more invested in the content.
Donna, remind me, though, I should just tell people that I changed my screen to say the words "don't read the slides" while I read the slides, right? Just to make sure that we don't have either the lame or the blind joke, right? I just want to make sure and cover that. Thanks, Debra.
Anyway.
So speaking of that, though, I think that because earlier I said speak to every point in the slide. That does not mean read every word on the slide.
Right.
So have the bullet point version, have the 5 words, the key words, then tell the story. And the other thing you can do is if you're rehearsing and you're spending 2, 3, 4, 5, 12 minutes on one slide, stop sharing your slides and just speak to the camera, and then advance the slides behind the scenes and continue and get comfortable making that transition so that you don't have to narrate it. So I'll tell speakers, if like my number one thing is, if you put up a question slide, it's going to be there for about 20 seconds and then I'm taking it away. So when it disappears, it's because of me. I think sometimes we hide behind our slides, and that's another version of boredom. But definitely speak to every point on your slide. But that does not mean to read every single word.
At South by Southwest, before the pandemic, I actually saw a speaker whose slides were just text, not bullets, not headlines, just text, like the pages of a book.
And this was at South by Southwest.
And she read the entire presentation off the slides. And I was trying, like, as I'm watching this, going, I've never seen this before. I was trying to figure out if it was actually an accommodation that she was making for people, perhaps, who were hard of hearing. Like, my entire presentation is on slides. And, I think it was actually just that she was reading the slides. Like, she had them up in front of her on her laptop, and she was reading them, and I was like, this is really painful. And I was watching people leave the room.
Oof.
And like, my heart is just...
Was her back to the audience while she read the presentation?
No, she had the laptop on the podium in front of her.
Because that's my favorite.
She was holding onto the podium for dear life.
I want to know, did she show you the book like a kid's book, like read the words on the page and then show you the page and then flip it on the laptop?
No, it was like literally PowerPoint slides, just words.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I was trying to figure out, like, kind of where this was coming from. But the longer it went on, the more people left the room. And that hurt. Like, that literally, like, this is a person who got an incredible opportunity and did not accept help, ask for help, obviously did not know what to do. So ask for help, if you don't know what you're doing, or if you're like, hey, I want to do a thing and maybe it's a little different, ask somebody. I want to also, I know we're kind of getting toward the end of our time together, and I've been saving up this little story because I think this is an important topic to cover. So obviously with Innovation Women, like, a lot of event managers get multiple Innovation Women members through us for a big conference or an event. And one of these conferences, I think, got about 5 or 6 different Innovation Women members to speak at it. And they invited me to come to the conference because they had gotten so many speakers from us. And there was one speaker who got up. She had just written a book about salary negotiation. And she got up to do her presentation. And presentation was relatively light on real actionable content. It was obviously a sales pitch. And a little bit cringy. And I'm sitting there in the back going, oh no, this is one of my speakers. And then she got to the portion of the conversation where the audience could ask questions, and somebody asked a question. And she said, no, you're going to have to go and buy my book to get the answer to that. And the event manager grabbed my arm so hard that I think I got a bruise. And she said, she's never speaking for us again.
Wow.
And I was like,
wow.
oh. So, sales pitches, no. Value? Yes. Actionable stuff? Yes. And please, dear God, do not talk down to your audience and tell them they have to buy your book to get the answer to that, because you are not making any friends.
That's awful.
I am speechless, which we all know doesn't happen very often. How do you, how? Right?
How do you think that's okay? I don't
Yeah,
know.
that is not okay. It's one thing to say, here's all the information and you can read more in my book. Is a
Yeah.
huge difference than saying, I'm not going to tell you.
I'm not going to tell you. Go read my book. And the sales pitch is the thing that most event managers, like they're very clear on that one. This is not a place for you to be doing a sales pitch. And if you are doing a sales pitch, we have this sponsored platform over here where you can buy a slot and you can do your sales pitch to your heart's content. But yes, dear God, please no sales pitches.
I was at an event not that long ago, and it was one of those that so I do pre-event prep. You go through and you say, okay, these are the different things that I can go to and commit to. And one of the ones that I really wanted to go to, I was late because I had some sort of, I think it was probably when they were retrofitting, and it was really, really loud. And I was like, Anyway, I turn it on. I'm like, that's okay. They have 30 minutes left. At 30 minutes left, they were doing a sales pitch. An hour session. And they hit the sales pitch before the halfway mark because she was into it.
Well, this is where the word webinar really gets such a bad rap, even though I can see really valid reasons to have that format sometimes. But the term is tied to the pitch because so many entrepreneurs were using it where they were giving about 15 minutes of content and then the 15 minutes of sort of fluffiness and really just driving 30 minutes to like whatever their sales page was. I don't know. The people who are creating tons of value are the people I want to work with, like to Bobbie's point. And I'm always just really disappointed when I work with someone and I can't refer them after. Like that bums me out. So if I'm excited about a product and then it turns out the person's really not someone I'd refer, or they don't follow through, or they have bad customer service, I think speakers have to remember that they're always sort of on a stage. I mean, that's another fail. It's like in person or virtual, like you could have a hot mic moment just by like being in the bathroom talking about someone. As my mother would say, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say last names.
Debra.
I have so many stories that are examples of people overhearing people talking about people
in the hallway, in the bathroom,
right?
Like at the buffet line, like just in a hospital, they've always warning signs. Don't talk about patients in the hallway. Don't talk about like the same thing. Speakers seem to forget that people will tune in and notice what they're doing because they got the speaker tag on, because they just came off stage, because people saw their name on the marquee, like whatever it is. A speaker foul is like alienating the audience before you've even gotten on stage because of one off-color comment you made. Yeah. I also want to say a mistake people make, particularly in person, because we don't have the ability to have our pronouns written in front of us, is misgendering someone. And a fail that I had for this was actually an auctioneer at a nonprofit charity event who kept saying, the bid is back to the gentleman in the corner. The bid is back to the gentleman in the corner. And finally she's like, I'm not a gentleman.
Should have used a bidder number.
So she's like, not, like here's someone who's about to spend all this money, and after like the third time, she's like, I'm done. Like I'm out of here, like, and I'm like, you could just say the person in blue, the person behind the person in red, the person wearing a hat. Like, if you're gonna interact during your Q&A, like just unless you can read people's names, like avoid names and pronouns. Unless if you can see their name tag, use their name. People love hearing their name. Yes. But it's too easy to mess up these days. And there are more and more people using they, them that you would not know are using they, them. So I think that's like And then my thing's from like 10 years ago, but it's probably even more of an issue now that we need to be paying attention to.
So don't bore people. Don't make them be in pain, but don't alienate them.
Don't mispronounce their name. Holy cow.
Or if you're not sure, say, oh, is this correct?
That's right. Ask them.
Oh, I always say, I don't know if this is Anna or Anna. She'll let me know when she unmutes.
Yes.
Well, I always say, I'm like, because sometimes you just, you have to call on them. And I'm like, I don't know. If I mispronounce, please correct us all. And actually, during my sound check with speakers, I will have the entire team say their full name as part of the sound check. And I say, this is your opportunity to correct everyone if we've been saying it wrong all these years.
I get phonetic like an MC. I'm going to be an MC for something next week. And I demanded phonetics for every single speaker because we are going to say their names before they go on. Get phonetics.
That's a good point.
This has been a wonderful conversation. I know we can go a whole nother hour, but okay, let's go. No, I'm just kidding. We've already talked about having the panel back in September leading up to John Chen's Engaging Virtual Meeting Conference. So watch for Speaker Friends coming again very, very soon. But before we wrap, I would love for you all to gift one goal. Is there one thing that speakers can do immediately to completely, I don't want to say remove their fails, but up that speaker game? So, John, what goal do you want to gift?
I'm going to give a shout out to my good friend, Rick Altman, who just did a course called Farewell to Death by PowerPoint, right? And he's a great designer. He has a conference coming up too, also in October, to check out. And his goal was number one, right? You are the speaker. And what he meant by that is like nobody ever paid a lot of money at a highfalutin conference to see slides. They came to see you, right? So that's the first part. And then right after that, he goes, and it's not about you, right? Because nobody wants to listen to Bobbie Carlton. Well, I would, but I would listen to Bobbie Carlton talk about who she is for an hour, right? When they came for the content. And that's another speaker failure. There was another speaker fail I heard last week. Someone came in a 45-minute keynote, spent 30 minutes talking about himself and his great achievements, and he lost his audience after minute 3. So the key here, right? It's about you, and then it's not about you. That's the best advice I could give.
Okay, but that's not a goal. We need to make it into a goal.
The goal is to make your next talk not about you.
Thank you. That's all I wanted.
There you go.
To phrase the sentence in the form of a goal.
What is a goal?
Okay, make your next talk not about you. I love it. Robbie?
Well, the tip I have is to get really clear on how you set up before you present. So particularly in a virtual format, so ideally have the same location that you're presenting from so you can control your background and your lighting and the sound quality, but even like where you put things on your desktop, that you standardize that. And this is something I always do. And I discovered that a lot of speakers don't, that every time they kind of get in, they like, things are set up differently every time. And I'm like, that's hard. That's more thinking. So how do you get your notes as close to your camera as possible? Where do you put the agenda on your screen? Where do you put the participant window on your screen? Where do you put the chat messages on your screen? When you open up the polls, where do you tuck those? When you open up breakout rooms, where do you tuck those? Is anything else have to be referenced? How do you layer? Like, it's not going to be full screen Zoom, so you can kind of layer, and you don't have to see the full slide to know it's there. Like, you can click on it. So particularly if you only have one monitor, like getting really clear about how you're using that real estate. And then if you have more than one monitor, getting clear on like what you put on the other monitor, so you're still looking in front. So you're looking to the camera and you never have to look over there. So I think some people just wing it all the time. I don't even know. So my goal for them would be to like have a bit of a checklist so that They always open the participant window. They always open chat. They always turn on the closed captioning. They just click through. And if they're using someone else's Zoom, they get in, they double check that the polls are right. They double check that the features are there they need right before the room opens. So you just kind of have this checklist that should probably be a physical list. If you haven't been doing it, you need to create a habit around it. So my goal for you would be to create a habit that is sustainable around how you set up.
Excellent. I love it. And before we get the goal from Bobbie, I want to just give a shout out and thanks to Olivia Vanessa Baumgart, I hope I pronounced it right, for saying such nice things about this show, Innovation Women. We're just glad that you enjoyed and everybody enjoyed. So thank you for that. Bobbie, what is the goal you wish to gift?
I would like you all to think about finishing your presentation on time. Okay?
Yay!
There is nothing that a producer or an event manager hates more than watching a presentation go over time. I've got 2 examples. Number 1, I once saw I will call it meandering keynote. And the meandering keynote went so far over the time. And I'm watching the producer in the back do this.
And for those who are listening, lots of hand signals.
Yes. The cut it off, wrap it up, hand signals. And I'm like, oh God. And the person on stage is actually, I see you. I'm going to keep going. I'm like, oh, that's even worse. The second example is we had a speaker.
Can I add something before you go to your second example? Moderators hate that too.
Yes.
If you are moderating in a panel and you tell people 3 minutes an answer and you're going on 6 and people are like making comments in the private chat, it's a respect thing.
Yes.
Sorry, that whole I had PTSD. Next example.
The next example is I was the last of 3 speakers. We each had 7 minutes. The first speaker kind of looked up from her notes around 12 minutes and audibly wondered, how much more time do I have? And the event manager's like, about 5 minutes ago. And the second speaker chimed in and said, she can have some of my time. At which point the second speaker also went way over. So
did you just leave?
I was like, and I kind of sidled over to the producer and I said, hey, do you need me to go short? She's like, you're the keynote. No.
Wow.
Like, okay.
I closed a virtual conference recently that was all professional speakers. And I joined at the call time I was told, which was supposed to be like before 2 speakers before me who were doing short sets. And then I had a long set and it was very clear we were running like really behind. And I'm writing them trying to be like, what do you want me to do? And they were like, keep going, use your whole. And I was like, you know what? No, it's a full day event. I'm going to modify my talk, but I'm not going to announce it. I think that's one of the other fails. People say, well, I don't actually have time for all these slides. So let me go buy them one by one. So I didn't do them. So I just made some quick modifications, took out a story. I mean, you just got to have your talk done in segments so you can expand it and contract it like accordion style. Yes. And that way I got them done with Q&A on time because that's a professional speaker. So I don't know how we got that far behind. I don't know what happened because I wasn't there all day, but I'm like, I kind of think this is one of the things between professional speakers, like they know this. Yeah. So that's one of the ways you actually stand
I
out
have to admit, I don't think I could have done that presentation in less than 7 minutes. And at that point, it's
actually, I mean, yeah, that's.
But Robbie, can I share the inverse problem? This actually just happened last week. You ready?
Oh no.
MC comes in and says they have a bit, right? But I said, what's the bit? And then they say, well, I can't tell you, right? It's a surprise. That's like red flag number 1. Number 2, the MC is scheduled for 45 minutes, right? So they can open with all these opening messages for 45 minutes. MC comes in, does the bit, and the bit is about having your camera off and fumbling around like you can't find the camera, right? You're tripping over some stuff. And then he came on camera in 3 minutes and he goes, okay, and now let's go to our first speaker. 42 minutes before call time for said next speaker.
Ooh.
And
Was the speaker there?
I have producers. Luckily, what they did is they were able to step in and they called the speaker who was actually, it was an East Coast conference, who was on the West Coast, and the speaker was ready early. So he jumped on, probably 30 to 35 minutes early and saved the whole program. But that is an MC who is like, nobody was reading the run of show. Nobody was like on the same page, and that's what happens, right?
That's when you don't have a tech rehearsal where you review all these pieces, right?
And
how much time does each person get? Who do you go after so you know you're getting ready? Like all that stuff. I mean, planning and preparation, rehearsing in the same modality that you're going to be presenting. Like, don't rehearse sitting down and then go to a conference in person where you get to move around, because you're just going to shake back and forth because you're not prepared, or cling to the lectern. I mean, there's a lot of this is just about taking the time to really be prepared.
I already pulled your final thoughts, Robbie and John, so I still need one from Bobbie. I also want to let people know where they can learn more about you. But so I have your final thought, Robbie, is adaptability. Professional speakers know how to do this. John, read the schedule, know the schedule. And Bobbie, what final thought do you have?
Show up early.
Yeah.
Because you never know when they're going to call you 40 minutes early.
That's a pro. Pro shows up early.
Absolutely.
Pro shows up early, not only because you might get called upon, but you also want to hear what the speaker ahead of you said. Okay. You want to make sure that that event manager knows you're there, because you don't want them worrying. Like, there's so many reasons to show up early. It's a half hour out of your life. Show up early, make an event manager's day.
Absolutely. And that also goes back to, if they love you, they're going to ask you back. If they hate you, you've burned a bridge till forever.
Yeah.
So, friends, where can people learn more about you, Bobbie?
Innovationwomen.com.
That's easy.
That's easy.
Let's hit the easy button on that one. And Robbie, where can people learn more about you?
Breakoutofboredom.com is where you'll get all the bonus resources for my latest book, and RobbieSamuels.com is the home of everything that I do.
Awesome. And John?
And this is your DJ here at engagingvirtualmeetings.com. Make sure and click the link and click subscribe. Back to you, Deb.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Putting the finger on the ear always makes you sound better, right? But it didn't do anything for me. It just made me sound better.
And you can follow me. I'm at the Deb Method everywhere. And you can go to thedebmethod.com/blog for the recap of this and all of these wonderful conversations. And as I mentioned before, you can also listen to us as the Deb Show podcast, which comes out every Thursday.
Wait, Deb, can I share a podcast fail? This is a true fail for me this week.
Apparently, yes. Go right ahead.
I just signed up on Buzzsprout and created a podcast, and then searched for it like 3 days later on Apple Podcasts and go, where the heck is my podcast? And I had not connected the 13 different other places where podcasts can be, where you have to like tell them to subscribe and pick up the feed. I didn't do that. So that's something I'll be doing this week. That's a real true podcast fail. Thanks.
So I'm saying that podcast fails should be another future topic. Maybe we will have it. Maybe it will be a different panel. I also put the link to my new podcast, Taste Buds with Deb, which is launching in May. The trailer episode's already up. Yes, I get to talk about food. Nothing but the food. This has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Bobbie Carlton, Robbie Samuels, John Chen, for joining me today. Thank you for those, whether you're watching live or the replay or listening to us, for choosing yourself, your speaking goals, because you want, because dramatic pause, you want to do more, be more. Let more people know who you are in your message. We're giving you permission. Go out there, go for it, because we know you can do it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.